Hello everyone, my name is Youth Pastor Jordan Winston. Today we are going to be discussing Chartmaster's God's Biblical Timeline and Obituary in detail, and we'll be going over some brief overview of some training on how to navigate the document. In its purpose, its background, and how it started. So first off, I'll start by saying that the only role that I play in the creation of this document is the IT side, information technology, facilitating the digital version from the original, which started in Microsoft Excel. It was worked on for several years, decades. To be precise, it was an individual denoted Pastor Vance Dean, including his wife, Pastor Peggy N. Dean. They contributed 100% of the efforts to get it to where you see it is today. The foundation was laid based off the Bible. The Bible is based off math. The Bible is based off inspiration through God, and it is the living word. Now, if you believe in the word of God, and God put a message in there, and the message contained numbers, and if you so happen to track the numbers and lay them out in such a way where you could tie back lineage from the present to the past, which is all the way to the beginning. If that's possible, you should be able to trace your lineage back. So this is what this document is. It's God's Biblical Timeline and Obituary Chart, and it gives you the ability to track your age, your lineage, your descendants from Adam to the present. So we'll start off by saying Jesus Christ died on the cross, okay? We know that according to the scriptures. But if you think in terms of a cross, it's up, down, left, right. This is built up, down, left, right, okay? So keep that in mind. So what you want to consider is creation in the beginning. So we'll go ahead and start and look at Genesis chapter 1. And we're going to skip down to verse 26, okay? So the Lord said this, and God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. Okay, great. Let's read 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. Question, when was that? What year was it? How many years ago was it? And if so, you can tell me how many years ago it was. How far was it from when you were born? What about when I was born? What about when Rosa Parks was born? What about when Malcolm X was born? Well, with this document, you can do that. But let's start from the beginning. Time starts at 0. So what you have is 0 BC. Time starts from 0 and continues 1, etc. 4004 BC. Counting down to the beginning of Christ being born. The year 0 is always, remember, the starting point. Never forget that. Everything starts from nothing. God created the earth and the heavens from nothing, but with his word. Okay? Amen? So, left, down, upright. These down arrows and these left and right arrows is going to be used to navigate left to right vertically. So first thing we want to consider, the only column we're going to be covering today is called the chart. This chart is containing all of the events in historical order, speaking on the members who were spoken of in a fashion that was given enough information for us to lay out the lineage. Adam, his descendants, which were many, but we only can focus on the ones that were given to us with numbers. If the word says Adam lived 130 years and begot a son, then he lived 130 years and begot a son at that age. So let's take a look at the first thing. Genesis chapter 5, okay? We're going to skip to Genesis chapter 5, and we're going to take a look at a verse. Verse 3, it says, and Adam lived 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness and after his image and called his name Seth. Okay. So Adam and Eve, they are 0 here. 0 years old, okay? Fully grown, Genesis chapter 5, verse 3. We're going to follow this all the way down, okay, until 130 years have passed. But I'm not going to bore you by skipping each number, so I'm just going to search the year 130, okay? So just put a 3 and a 0 here, all right? And then I'm going to hit search. And I know 130 because that's how much information I have as far as the background knowledge is. Now, there's much more to learn, which I do not know, but we're only going to cover the essentials, the basics, the layouts. Adam and Eve, they're 130 years old at this specific point. Genesis chapter 5, verse 3, and Seth is 0 years old. So we follow that verse 130 years from the starting point of creation when God created the heavens and the earth. Not only that, when you look at this, you have to consider there's plenty of other things that are going to take place. Seth is begotten here. But what about his son? But what about Enos' son, who was Seth's son, etc.? What about the flood? What about Noah? What about Moses and the things that took place with him? What about the children of Israel? Some events that had some numbers in there. What about the birth of Christ? But let's slow down. Let's go back. What about Babylon? What about King David? What about all the kings that reigned? All that is covered down the lineage if you can follow it with the stories. That is crucial, okay? Now, you can prove this document by understanding one fact. It's based off the original document, which is the Word. And the Word will never change. It's written down. Mathematics is the crucial point. Adding, subtracting, dividing, and leaving a remainder of 0 when you get to the start and the end of something. And that's what this document does. 130 years from creation, we have Seth being begotten. Okay, what took place next? All right, we know Seth begot Enos at what age? He begot Enos at the age of 105. Let's take a look at that verse, but let's stay focused on the year where you're still at. 130 years from creation, or 130 BC from Adam, okay? Genesis chapter 5, right? Verse 6, it says, and Seth lived 105 years and begot Enos. Okay, I want you to pay attention to something now. We skipped a verse. Genesis chapter 5, verse 5 says, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years and he died. Okay, now if you're reading this like a novel, just word by sentence, you might think Adam is already deceased at this point, but he's not. I'm going to elaborate on that. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's navigate down 105 years. So 130 plus 105 is going to give us what? 235. So we're going to jump down to the year 235 BC from Adam. We're counting in sequence here. So we'll just put 2, 3, and a 5, and we'll hit search. And what do we have? Adam and Eve, 235. That's their age, okay? From creation. Enos, 0. He's begotten here. And we have Seth, 105. Enos born. Okay. Now, when you read verse 5 in Genesis chapter 5, right? And then you went to 6, you forgot about Adam. It said he was dead, but he's alive and well. Okay. How old is he? 235 years old. But keep in mind, if we navigate over to the right using these arrows, you're able to see other descendants who are yet to be born. So we're going to take a look at a few of them. We know Adam's 235 years old. Okay. Seth is 105 years old. Okay. Now he begot Enos at this point. Okay. Genesis chapter 5, verse 6. That's what it says. We followed it all the way down from Adam to Seth to Enos. And then we're going to continue to Canaan, to Mahalalel, to Jared, to Enoch, etc. But let's take a look at a few of them. Enos is born here, okay, the year 235 BC, counting from creation, right? But then Canaan, he's not born. How many years until he's born? 90. 90 years until he is begotten. And that's Genesis chapter 5, verse 9. So, as you can see, Genesis chapter 5, just within from verse 3 to verse 9, you're going to have a total of 300, okay, and 25 years right there. But you can't see that reading the verses like that. This lays out the verses in a grid form that allows you to visualize what God was saying. Every year is important. I'm going to give you an example. You were born at one specific point. Let's say you are now 50 years old. Each one of those years that you live is important, okay? We only can speak on the account that God gave us. He gave us people, and he said, these were the begotten. Okay, now many of these members had sons and daughters, but you cannot trace it through those people. God did not give you a number for those individuals. It just so happens he gave us enough information that if you sit down and you take a look at the references and you count and do the math yourself, and then you'll come to a conclusion. God created the earth. He had descendants. You are a descendant from somewhere. But if you trace your lineage back, we can still tie it back to today. It's all about putting it in perspective. Math doesn't lie. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here. And I'm going to jump to the future, okay? We are in the year 2020, right? How many years is that from these events that we discussed today? We'll go ahead and start with Adam, okay? We're at the year 235 BC. That's counting from creation. Slash, let's not forget this year, which we didn't talk about much, the slash or 3769 BC. The first number we started with was 4004, if you recall, okay? If you subtract 235 from 4004, you're going to come up with the number 3769. That number is going to follow us all the way down to 4000, which is going to bring us to where Christ is born. Then we're going to jump into his life, and then he's going to be crucified. And then we're going to be in the AD period, okay? Or some people call it the Common Era. But now we're in modern time. Let's jump to modern time. Ultimate pivoting points. But we're going to jump to the year AD. That's what we're going to use. 2020. And we're going to stay on this particular column. When I hit search, we jumped way ahead in the future. This year, 2020 AD, Adam has been deceased for 5,090 years, according to the lineage, if you follow it from the numbers that God left us with and you map it all together. Seth has been deceased for 4,978 years. Enos has been deceased for 4,880 years. And the other person we spoke on was Canaan. He has been deceased for 4,785 years. You would not know that looking at those verses. You would not be able to put that together. This is putting together every single anointed individual and allows you to navigate every single year, because every single year is important. So if I were to just hold this, you will see the years just going to keep going and going and going all the way back to the beginning. And you can count and see every number. But let's not just forget that we're talking about descendants. We're talking about events. Okay, so we're talking about the flood. We're talking about the law. We're talking about who was the first king to reign and who was his descendant. How old was that person? What year was it? What generation did it occur? Now, I'm going to jump back to the beginning and leave with one point. The beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Right? You're living on the earth. But God set an ordinance, okay? He made a promise, okay? He promised what? We're going to go check that promise out, and then I'll elaborate on that, and we'll end there. We're going to go to Genesis, but not quite. We're going to navigate to Psalms, right? We're going to go to Psalms, and if we're able to actually navigate correctly, Psalms chapter 105 verse 8 says, he remembers his covenant forever, the promise he made for 1,000 generations. What is 1,000 generations? Who knows what one generation is? We have to start from 1 or 0. Okay. So years, we're counting years from events, people, and you can tie in your year to that. Now, generations. A generation is equivalent to 30 years. With that being stated, how would you figure out the year 2020, what generation that is? Well, we have to do a little math. But thankfully, we've got the math figured out for you. So if we jump to the year 2020, okay? And I'll put this in perspective, okay? 2020 is equivalent to 6,020 years from creation. And I know that because I'm spending time with this and getting to know it. 2020. Okay. Now, the current generation, right, so happens to be generation 200.20. Now you're saying, how? So, well, I told you that 6,020 years from creation is equivalent to 2020 AD, which is the current year. 30 years is equivalent to 1 generation. Okay, keep that in mind. So if we're in generation 200.20, okay, and we do a little math, we're going to take 200, okay, and we're going to multiply it times 30. That should give you 6,000. The 0.20 is the remainder of years. It follows a specific format in which you can learn through the other tutorials we have available. 6,000 plus 20 is 6,020. All these numbers represent the same year. 2020 AD is equivalent to generation 200.20, as well as 6,020 years from creation. Keep in mind, he promised a word to 1,000 generations. We're only in generation 200.20. So what does that mean? We have 1,000 generations total to go, but we have a total of 1,091.10 generations, because there is a specific point when the promise started, and that is when the law came in effect, which is the year 2740 BC from Adam. We'll stop there. We have to go into great detail on how you would break those numbers down, because we have to figure out the back end. The back end is the story that goes behind that and how you follow along. But in detail, keep this in mind. The cross, left, down, upright, we're covering north, south, east, west. Every person on the globe, every person inhabiting the earth can be tracked. I'll leave you with this. I'm 27 years old. I was born 1992. My year, 1992, is equivalent to generation. You can click on any one of these and get the number, okay? Is equivalent to generation 199.22. That's the generation that I was born in, from that promise that God spoke about in Psalms chapter 105, verse 8. Also, I was born 5,992 years from creation. The only way you can know that is if you trace what God put in place. I'm signing out. Thank you.